A number of places in Masechet Brachot which discusses what we call Sheidim, in English known as demons, as loose, if I'll call it loosely translated. What? Or mazikim. Mazikim, demons are on. Hua Yetzahara, Hua Malach HaMavet. All mazikim are in the same category. Chazak Baruch. Appreciate it, money. Anyways, so this came up in the Gemara's, at least we're learning, in Daf Gimel and in Daf Vav. On Daf Gimel, as we know, when a person goes into a chorva, he has to be careful for mazikin. One of the things a person has to be careful when he goes into a barren place is for mazikim, because they find themselves always in barren places. That's A. And B, even more interesting Gemara is, of course, the famous Gemara on Daf Vav, is if you ever want to know what you are surrounded by, they're there when you're sleeping. They know when you're awake. If you want to know what's going on, Gemara says that you put sand around your bed and you could see chicken feet all over the place, because that is the appearance of what these demons look like. Okay, that is the appearance of what they look like, because they have feet such as that, which I'm not going to get into the reason why for that point. Okay, so at this stage we see clearly from at least these two Gemaras, and there are more Gemaras coming later in Brachot also, that discuss this concept. Now, before we start explaining what these things appear like, I just want to display, to show that these things exist all over Shas. They exist all over Shas. Besides the Gemaras, which we just mentioned now in Brachot, the Gemara also mentions in Shabbat and Daf Chavtet Amud Bet, which we say in Bamem Alikin, Amechaber Tener Mipnei Shu Mityar Mipnei Ruach Ra Patur. If a person extinguishes a candle because he's worried about mazikin in the area, because you're worried about it, so then you are patur, you're not chayav, for whatever reason. The Gemara in Yevamot and Daf Kuf Chav Bet in Gittin Samech Vav says that if someone is in a pit and he's screaming, "Give a get to my wife," he's screaming out to give a get to his wife because he knows he's going to die in the process of being in this deep pit. So then you have to make sure that he's not a shade. The Gemara always checks up to make sure that it's a real person. And the Gemara gives simanim to make sure that he has a shadow of a shadow. And then you know that it is really a person. Because Sheidim, as we'll see soon, do not have shadows for the reason we'll see soon. The Gemara in Gittin also says in Daf Samech Vav that sometimes the shade will appear in the demut of a person. We found it by Yehoshua Lamashal, that Yehoshua was worried when he bumped into the Sar Tzvakot, when he bumped into that person who was holding a sword that wanted to kill him. The Gemara in Sanhedrin brings that he said Shalom, and the Yeshua was checking, are you a shade or are you not a shade? In other words, when he was checking to see, are you on our side or not, he actually wanted to make sure that he is on our side. Of course, there's a very famous Gemara in Gittin, and Daf Samech Chet, which brings with Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech was a very smart man, and he was able to capture not only animals, but also Sheidim. He actually wanted to deal with a guy named Ashmadai, don't mess around with him, that he wanted to help him find the Shamir worm in order to take care of the Beit HaMikdash, and he needed his services in order to do that. But in doing so, he got himself in some major trouble. I'm not going to go through the whole entire Gemara, but the guy basically threw out Shlomo HaMelech. He metamorphosized himself to look like him, and he was with Shlomo HaMelech's thousand wives. So the moral of the lesson is watch out for these guys, because they can be extremely dangerous. Shlomo HaMelech almost lost everything because he was dealing with these dangerous shadim. Okay. Sheidim exists. Sheidim are all over the Gemara. Tetzivin of pasuk. The pasuk in Parshas Acharei it says, "V'lo yisrichu od sivchayim l'seirim asherim zonim achareihem." The pasuk over there says that a person should not go ahead and give a zvachim, a type of korban, which we'll speak out what that is soon, to the sheidim. Chukat olam tiyeh zot lahem l'doratam. This is a chok that it's usher to go ahead and do that. It says Rashi, who are these seirim? Elu ha-sheidim. Seirim yirakdu sham. Seirim, seir is really normally a goat, but they also take the appearance or the name of a shade, which again, this also we will speak out. But here we have psukim that also has it. There's also psukim in Azinu, which give a reference to the idea of shadim. The moral of the story are these things are real. They're not a fallacy. They exist. They're in the Gemara all over the place. They're in psukim. Okay, clear? Everyone's with me? Everyone's convinced? You got it? We're good. Now, obviously, I'm coming to a fouke. I'm coming to say, not like, it's not me, it's everybody, and everybody would come to disagree with the great Rambam, Rav Moshe bar Maimonides, who very famously said in his Pirush Mishnayot in Avodah Zarah, he also writes about it in the Yad HaChazakah, that this whole shadim thing is a one big bluff. He says it's for Amaratzim or for people who think of scary, spooky things and this, who watch too many movies. That's what he makes it sound like. He sounds like that's not really something existent. You should know, not so many people know this, the Meiri, this Meiri is in Sanhedrin, but in general the Meiri is very much like the Rambam. He takes the Shita of the Rambam. People are familiar with the Rambam, that he's a little bit more, if I can use the word, a naturalist. He's more into not doing superficial zachim, things that are too much. He tries to make things as down to earth as possible. And the Meiri, you should know, follows suit very much after him. The Meiri was only discovered approximately 100 years ago, so he's not very quoted very often, but he also does that. Lamaisa, I think everybody knows all the Rishonim from the beginning to the end, whether it's the Ramban or the Ritva in his Sefer of Tshuvas, or the Redvaz and Gimel, Tav Zayin, and more popularly the Vilna Gaon. Now the Vilna Gaon, a little bit, it's not nice for him to say this, he's not really a Rishon, but he's qualified as a Rishon, but he very famously says, in Siman Kuf Ayin Tet, he writes these words on the Rambam, this Rambam that says that Sheidim don't really exist, for Hiku Ota Al Kadkodo. They already hit the Rambam on the head. I said, not something that anyone should say such a thing. The Vilna Gaon is allowed to do that. They already hit the Rambam on the head for saying such wild things. He quotes Gemaras all over Shas. He quotes Psukim all over Shas. He says these things exist, they're real. Don't start getting, he says, but he said because the philosophia, the too much attributing himself to philosophy, got to his head. That's why he said he hit him on his head. He said since he was so busy with philosophy, so therefore he was denying things which are straight Gemarot, more or less. We're good? Yeah? Seder, that's the klal that we have over here.
So the Rambam
The Rambam was the one who, I don't know if the word is denial, but he kind of played it down. He said they're not really, it's just like potential powers and this, but it's not really something that really exists. Like I said, we know the Mishnah Pirkei Avot says one of the 10 things that were created on Beinish Mashot was Sheidim. He has to give answers to all these Gemaras, and he kind of does, but you know the rule. When you give too many answers to too many questions, it's already like Adkan. Like you can't, there's got to be a gvul to how far you can take it. Anyways, so this is our idea that we know as Sheidim, and they appear all over the place, and they are extremely relevant. Seder? Now, in that pasuk in Parshat Acharei Mot, where it discusses the idea of the Seirim, which we said are like goats, which are kind of like Sheidim, the Rishonim already speak over there. The Sforno Lamashal already says that, he already brings down about the koch of the Sheidim. It's a very long Sforno. The Sfornos are usually very laconic. He's very brief and straight to the point. It's an absolutely beautiful Sforno. It all sticks out of my head when I went through the Sfornos. That was like the one that hit me like the most because it's such an incredible Sforno. And over there, he basically says how many people would worship, or they wouldn't necessarily worship them as a Avodah per se, but they would feed the demons, and they would feed the demons in order to get their bidding from the demons. It was a way of getting certain thing in order to make a relationship, a connection with the demons in order to get what they can get out of them. And he would help them b'tzura b'kol sheyeh, in some way that they can do that. Of course, he brings from the Gemara in Eruvin about Yosef Shida. Now Yosef Shida, he was a nice guy. I said this, he was a good kind of shade. He wasn't so bad. But the Gemara brings over there that he was over the Isser of Tchumin on Shabbat. He used to fly from one place of the world to the next. He would go all over the place. He was a naughty boy. Wasn't so a thing. And the Gemara in Chulin also brings that there was a shed in the house of Rav Ashi. In the house of Rav Ashi, at the time that he did it, and Rav Ashi was able to capture him or whatever it was. I'm just trying to point out that he brings down, it's real, and people sometimes would capture him and feed him. We're going to speak about why and what. But I'm just trying to give you a picture of what we're discussing here. Okay? Let's describe what these things are made of. Okay? What are these existent things made out of? Okay? What I'm going to say now is based on straight Rishonim. First of all, the Sforno I just told you, the Rabbeinu Bechaye, the Ramban, the Sefer Ikrim of the Ramchal. The Sefer Ikrim of the Ramchal, the Derech Hashem, is in Parakeh. We spoke about it in the Derech Hashem share a little bit. and there's 4 of them kavanas Torah. Basically, the yesod behind the way it's understand is a malach, an angel, is completely spiritual. He's what we call kulay ruchani. He's completely spiritual. He's made of spiritual elements. He's completely just ruach. That's really what he is. He's a spiritual aspect. You can't touch it. You can't feel it. A malach is just an existential entity, right? We are humans made of the famous 4 elements, which we're quite familiar with. Eish and Mayim and Afar, right? We're made of what we call Ruach is the spirit, and Eish is fire, and Mayim is water, and then Afar is the ground. Those are the 4 elements that make us up. Okay? Those are the 4 elements that make us up. Shadim are a breed, a hetzi as they say. They're a half and half between one and the other. Half and halves always have the most trouble with shidduchim. So Sheidim don't know if such half of them. That's Sephardi, half Ashkenazi, half this and that. They're half and half. They have a little bit of both sides. They are made of 2 spiritual elements of ruach and esh. Again, malachim are not made of any elements. They're spiritual. The Sheidim have half of we have. We have 4 elements, and they have 2 of them. Afar and Mayim are physical, right? Dirt and water are physical elements. They don't have those. They didn't get those. They only got the other 2, which is fire and ruach and wind. That's what they got, which are, of course, we see much more spiritual things. And that's what it means that we're created on Bein Hashmashat. The Midrash actually said, the Rav, the Bar Tanura, I'm not going looking very far, on that mission, Pirkei Avot and Pirkei says, what does it mean that we're created on Bein Hashmashat? So Kadosh Baruch Hu started the process of created them. He threw on them ruach, he threw on them some esh, and then bing, shkia hit. Oh, what a bummer. He ran out of time. He wasn't able to do it because Baruch Hu keeps Shabbat. So therefore, he was not able to finish, and they were an unfinished product. They never got the physical part. They only got the spiritual part. So it ends up that they are, as we say, a little bit chetzi chetzi. They have a little bit of each. Okay? That's, he says, what's pshat in the pasuk, Vayas Elokim et chayat haaretz lemina. What does it mean? Vayas Elokim et chayat haaretz lemina, to their min. It means the mina is coming to be marbe, also shadim that were created on Bein Hashmashos, but they're lacking something. They're not finished. Why am I mentioning this? So you know, first of all, about them. There's a lot of things you'll learn, but one thing I want to tell you, and that's an important factor, is because of this, they are jealous of people. How to take that? It makes you feel good, no? Shadim are actually jealous of you because they would love to have a body. It's a bummer not to have a body. It's not so gishmak. You only have a kind of spiritual entity, but they don't have the physical body. They're just kind of like a walking shadow around here. And the poor guys have chicken legs. You know, it's not gishmak. So since it's not so enjoyable, they are actually jealous of us. Why am I telling you they're jealous of us? That's where their point of kitru comes. That's why they can actually be a little bit dangerous. If a person utilizes them incorrectly, he can actually get hurt or in trouble. Like I said, Shlomo Melech almost got thrown off his throne and whatever, a long story over there, but you see that he was actually put himself in physical danger as a result of it. Okay? This is the description of how they look. I will present to you a Gemara in Chagiga, also from Kinyan Masechta, which I'm sure you guys remember, and Daf Tezayim. And over there the Gemara actually says that Malachim are angels, people are people, and Sheidim are in the middle. 3 things Sheidim are similar to Malachim, to angels, and 3 things they are similar to people. Mamish, like I told you, half and half. They have 2 elements and not 2 elements they're missing. So the 3 things they're similar to people is because they actually are puravu. They die. They don't live forever. They die like people. They live long lives. Lamashal, this guy Ashmadai lived almost 1,000 years. They do have a long lifespan because they eat healthy and that's it. And they can take care of themselves. They do a lot of exercise. They fly around all over the place. So they're very healthy people. They're able to stay around for a long time. Second of all, they're puravu. They also reproduce, meaning they don't just do the amoeba parmesium thing, right? They actually have to have a male and a female type of phenomenon. And also they're oichlim v'shaisim, and they also have to eat and drink, which that we're about to discuss. Okay, so they have these 3 aspects which are similar to us. But they have 3 spiritual aspects, 3 superhuman aspects. And from here we get all our all our superhero type of phenomena, they get it from here. First of all, they have wings like the malachim, which means they're able to flap around and fly. Tasim misofa alam ad sofa kamalachim. They're able to get around from one place of the world to the next. And also meaning they're not limited by space. They are not bound to space. They're able to move from one place to the next freely. And also they're able to see mi'acharei apargud. What does it mean mi'acharei apargud? They could see somewhat of the future. They're able to see somewhat of the future, what's going to happen. They cannot change the future, but they're somewhat able to see the future because just like they are above space, they're also above time. The more spiritual you are, the more above time you are. You're able to see a little bit. You're able to see a little bit above. And that's why people like to hang out with these guys, even though it could be dangerous. It's fun to hang out with these shindalids, these shadim. You know why? Because through them, I might be able to see what's the right stock to invest in. No, they're going to tell me, Apple's in, you should know, put it in 10 years, you're going to be a rich man. So it's very good to be able to see where the future, right? That's a good thing. So that's why people are very into trying to deal with them, even though, like I said, it could be a dangerous venture. It could be something dangerous, but it's still worth it. Okay, that's that. Now, how do I get on their good side? You guys want to know after this convincing, cogent speech that I'm giving here. I'm here. This is all about a business transaction. So I'm just trying to get you guys to be rich here. So how do I convince these guys to be able to be on my good side? Okay, the answer is you have to feed them well. They need a certain food. They are limited to a certain diet. You remember I told you they're very healthy. They fly around all over the place. They do a lot of exercise. They need a good diet. What do they eat in order to keep them in place? They are very limited in their diet. They can't just go ahead and eat carrots and lettuce. They're much more limited. They're not physical. Says the Sforno in that piece in Achrei, their etzem murkav dak meod sheyishtaneh leetzem hanizon. They need some type of food which is extremely spiritual. It has a small amount, not a spiritual food, that doesn't help me. It has to have a small amount of physicality, but it's a spiritual, physical food. Okay, it's a food which is spiritual kind of. So the first thing I think when I hear that, and this I mentioned in the Life After Death Shurim, is of course the man. The man which we ate on the during the 40 years of the Midbar was an extremely spiritual food. It was made of these little coriander seeds, right? It was made of little things that are dak bechuspas, and we are able to eat on it. Of course, we know it tasted. Why did it taste like anything you wanted? Just for the fun of it? No, because something spiritual is not limited to place. It was able to, whatever I had in mind, that's what it tasted like. That's what it was like. Of course, we know that we had no extract. When a person was eating it, he didn't have to go to the bathroom the whole 40 years. Okay, so he was able to digest it properly. It digests completely. It's called lechem evarim because it goes and it got absorbed into your whole body perfectly. Man, fantastic. That man is the food of the malachim, okay, which are in the higher worlds already. We're in the higher worlds of Olam HaBriya, but that's the food of the Bria. That's not the food of the Sheidim. I tricked you. You probably thought I have to get some man on my hands here. No, I have an easier solution. That's not, because like we said, the Sheidim are somewhat physical. Man is even too spiritual for them, believe it or not. What do they eat? You know what they eat? You look at that big sforno over there, you know what they eat? They eat blood. Vampires. They go ahead and that's what they consume. Hemoglobin. That's what they're into. Eating blood. Why blood? That just sounds so... I'm telling you, all the goyim get their stuff from us. Everything, from the beginning to the end. This stuff has been written not centuries, millennia before any of these guys with the big fangs who are coming to you in the middle of the night and chopping. It was written way before that. And they copy everything from us. That's why I kind of like these things. You just realize how much literature the goyim have completely ripped off of Judaism and just made money off of us. We deserve, what's it called? Percentages, royalties. We deserve royalties. We made most of it. He's saying we made the movies anyways, Warner Brothers and this, he's right, that's true. Anyways, so why is it that blood is so luscious to them? So listen to this. Hadam hu nefesh. We all know the psukim that tell us The source of life is blood. If chas v'shalom, your blood stops running through your arms, it feels like a dead piece of skin. It feels like 10 pounds of meat. It's fun. The incredible thing when your blood is running through your stream is it's light. You can go up, you can fly. It's incredible. Carry a dead body and carry a live body. Everybody knows the difference of the weight. Chai nose et atzmo. It's a difference in halacha and ilchot Shabbat. Also about this phenomenon, which is not for now, but al kopanim, we see that dam is the nefesh. It gives the life breath, what we call ruach chayim, the spirit of life. The ruach chayim comes through what we call dam. Oh, what did I just say? I said ruach chayim. So inside of dam lies ruach. Oh, it has ruach in there. Ooh, I love ruach. Ruach is great. Sheidim live by ruach. Remember what they're made up of? 4 elements. One of those elements was ruach. And you know what their other element that they're made up of is? Esh. What's esh? Your blood system. Why is blood system? We are warm-blooded creatures, more or less. And we all know the reason why we're warm-blooded is due to the fact that I just said it, warm-blooded, right? The koch of our blood is there to warm up our bodies. So then everyone's hemoglobin, everyone's blood circulatory system, you have also the property of ruach, which is wind, and you have the property of esh, of fire. Ooh, that sounds so yummy for a shade. That is so yummy. That's exactly what they are. Matzah min et mino. We like to eat meat because we're meat, right? Matzah min et mino. We're like meat eaters. We're carnivorous a little bit because we like things. All right, sometimes you have to eat your broccoli. What can you do? Because you're forced into it. But be karan, right? That's where it comes from. So the Sheidim, that is why they love to have blood, because it connects exactly to their tchunat aguf. And this really explains a lot of things. Because the second you realize that, you can understand why dam could have properties of tumah, or bringing shadim, or bringing tumah to the world. I'll take a very simple example. This I didn't see inside of a book, but I think it's obvious. Everybody calls all the time when they have to, Rahman al-Itzlan, go to a cemetery, and their wife wants to go, chas v'shalom, for a relative. Why do they go? Oh, my wife is pregnant. Am I allowed to go? Is she allowed to go? This and that. That, you should know, the question is fine. It's a good question, but it's a mistake. Most people make a mistake. The isser, or the problem for a woman to go to the Beit HaKfarot, is not when she's pregnant. Hafuch, when she's pregnant, it's usually better. The problem is when she is tameh, when she's having her cycle, during that time of month, as we say. Why? Because blood brings on mazikin. It's a very mikatric time. It's not something that's a very ample time for women. Stay away from dead people. That's where all the mazikim are. All the mazikin are hanging out in the Beit HaKfaret. You just read about in the Gemara and Brachot. When you walked into a churva, you walked into a desolate place, they're mazikin all over the place, they're there to get you. A woman who's during that time of the month, it's not kedai to go to that time. So it's not a fuch. When she's pregnant, it's usually even better, right? Then she's usually okay. It's not such a big deal. So we see that's why it comes. Now again, this is not always, if I could say, democratically correct to say that, oh, women are tummy. But we have psukim about it. We just read about it in last week's parsha. You don't have to look so far. Even Lavan, who thinks Lavan is a Rasha? I vote the fact that he's a Rasha. He's a good for nothing, right? He's a mean, evil, described. The man has the best son-in-law, 4 times 4, and look what he does to him. This is an evil person. What does he do? I'm sure he did not keep Shabbat. I have a very strong feeling he didn't keep kosher. He goes to his daughter, he's begging for his trafim. This avodah zarah is like, he's crazy about it. It's mamish like drugs. He needs to have these trafim. It's like, he puts them in his thing, right? He smokes up all the time with these trafim. He needed his avodah zarah. He's looking desperately for them. He goes to the last available spot to his daughter, and she says, I'm sorry, Papa, I can't get up. It's derech nashim li. It's derech nashim li. Get up! I want to see what's under it. Don't lie. Don't pull it. Rachel, she's a mamash machine. I know your shtick. Get up. What does he do? He runs with his tail between his legs, runs away from her. Stay away. His own daughter, he doesn't want anything to do with her. He's not even married to the woman, right? When you're married, so you're supposed to run away. Seder, but now you're running. It's your daughter. What do you care? Says the Ramban, you see from here, when a woman is going through that time period, they were off limits. They had, as we know in halacha, they had their own special chair, own special, I'm afraid to say what I'm allowed to say on the camera. They put in a separate room. I'm not kidding. They were like in a totally separate section, in a totally separate thing. That's what it's brought down. It's brought down in Halacha Gamken in your day over there. So we see that there was such an idea of being pushed away, of being nimchak, and the reason is because the dam brings out the koch of these shadim, of the spirits, the negative spirits, which can be extremely dangerous. You got it? So it's something that is very real, something very tashtit, something that's very real about it. Now, I mentioned to you before the Rambam. So this, I don't know if this Rambam 100% works with the previous Rambam, but the Rambam also says, I'm just advancing here, in more Nevuchim, Gimel Mem Vav, he does bring that there is a group of people known as the Tzava, who they worship the Sheidim. The Ramban, he says it's called necromancia, and there's groups of people who worship to the Sheidim, they also do their Sheidim tricks. And it's called nigromancia, that they go ahead and try to get to the spirits. A very Indian type of things, all the ho, the dancing and this and that is usually getting to the good spirits and the bad spirits and trying to push away the bad spirits, which they're referring to over here. Now, having said that, says the Ramban, this is very typical Mor Nevuchim, Guide to the Perplexity, does a lot of this, but over here is for our subject. He basically says that the way they would worship them is by taking blood, which he says is tamei me'od. They held it was very, very bad stuff. They would try to stay away from it, but they would take it and drink the blood, because that was their way of being able to talk or relate to, again, the Shem Dalids. Why? For the reasons I told you before. You can do a lot of fancy stuff with it. Maybe you can even fly with it without a cape, and you can also go ahead and see the future and do a lot of good stuff with it. So they would actually drink this stuff, and he says that's the reason, says the Rambam, why we are usher in eating blood. Not everybody likes to give ta'amei Torah. You know the whole Mor Nevuchim is all about that. And in the Sefer he writes, that's the reason why we don't eat blood, because we stay away from these types of sorceries, which are completely usher. Simen kuf ayin tet. It's brought down that you're not allowed to do anything in talking to the Sheidim. It's called Maisa Sheidim and Simen Seif Tazayin. Speaking to the Sheidim is not allowed. So part of it is eating this blood or drinking this blood in order to be able to make this relationship, to be able to make this connection. Also, says the Rambam, another halacha. When a person kills a chaya or off, when you kill certain animals, there's a halacha of kisui adam. It's brought in Simen Chavtet, that we know that the halacha, it's a whole parak in Chulin, that a person is supposed to cover the blood of a chaya and off. Not when you kill, most of the times we're killing cows and sheep or whatever, and that you don't have to cover. Only by a chaya, wild animal, and chickens. There's the idea of kisui adam. Why do you have to cover up their blood? The answer is, says the Rambam, for the same reason. Because we don't want the mekatrigim to come and, what do you call it, the food, to abduct the food, or to metame the food, to take advantage of the food. Okay, it's in order to avoid all these types of things. So these are what they said. Another avodah that they say is they used to have blood baths. Now I think this is partial, it's my own addition, but I think it's obvious. There's no question that we always read, oh, this Paro guy was such a rasha, he was good for nothing, he had tzara'at, he killed 500 babies every day in order to make blood baths. Couldn't they think of something nicer? Just make a pool, just to get the hose and just put water. It's like a very frustrating type of thing. You had to kill so many things just for a stupid blood bath. But the answer is, this is what he meant, because he was going to get help from the sitra, from the other side, from the wrong side. By swimming in blood, he was feeding them. He was giving them sustenance, he was helping them out, and then they were able, kabiyachol, to heal him. If he got healed in the end, I don't know. But at the end of the day, that's the reason why these things are done. So all these explanations are here to show you that there is reality to this phenomenon. It's something that definitely exists. And it's something that, if I could say, it was always here. I do want to mention, I told you that the Rambam says it's these things are all a facade. So some people say, they say this b'shem the Kutzker, but I actually saw a midrash that they learned from the midrash. The Kutzker would say, from the time, the Rambam was the Gadol Ador. The Gadol Ador, from the time the Rambam said Shadim don't exist, they stopped existing. If you're wondering why it's okay nowadays, and we're a lot more lenient these days, is from the time the Rambam decided that they're not around. They were around all the time. They're Gemarot, Psukim, no way, they're around. But from the time the Rambam said they're not around, now you know why we have a little bit more of a calm scenario around us. We don't feel this, right? We don't feel Sheidim going ahead and taking advantage of us, right? You understand? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nהיה b'dvaro. The reason why is because the Rambam made this psak. So listen to a midrash, incredible midrash. to Parshas Nosai. Should know from all the midrashim in Bereshis Rabbah, Parshas Nosai is the longest midrash that exists. It's humongous. And he writes over there, B'yom klot Moshe lahakima mishkan. On the day that Moshe stopped putting up the Mishkan, he writes over there, what's b'yom shekalu amazikin min haolam. The midrash says from the time that Moshe put up the Mishkan, he was able to terminate the mazikim from being around. Kebiyoch, when the Beis Mikdash is around, when the Mishkan's around, so he terminates it. Through the Mishkan, was able to do. They bring a remez that, what does it mean, B'yom Kolot Moshe? Moshe is Rav Moshe Bar Maimon. Right? You understand? It's the Rambam. It's the Rambam that from Moshe was around, that was Mechaleh, the mazikim, from being around. Al Kopanim, we see that mazikim are real. They're really, there's numbers of stories about them that exist. I'll tell you one that it's a real story that happened. It's brought in the Sefer Kav HaYosher. Okay? Now, before I say the story, I want to tell you that clearly we said, like before, they always hang out in barren places not around. Mamish like your Gemara in Brachot and Davet. In a churva, we know that there's a halacha before a person goes into the bathroom. There's a certain amirah. It's also Gemara in Brachot. It's brought in Siman Gimel. There's a certain things that you have to say before you walk into a bathroom, which we don't do anymore because we don't have mazikim, like I just told you. So since the Beit HaKiseh is a place that was dangerous, you would say something before you would walk in, or an empty field. It's a very famous Gemara in Kiddushin on Chavtet. By me, it's very famous, because I remember when I was in 7th grade, we didn't listen to the Rebbe at all. I don't remember one thing that ever happened in that class, in the whole 7th grade. I do remember one time a substitute came, who was a very smart rabbi, because substitute would be haunted, right? He would be haunted completely. What happened? He came and he learned with us a Gemara. What a Gemara? But the Gemara in Kedusha, Chavtet, he spoke about a Gemara that there was in the shul a demon. There was a shade going around, and we were also interested to hear this. And in the shul, this demon was going around, and Abaye came to visit for Shabbat. So there was they accepted amongst each other. No one invite Abaye to his house for Shabbat. Everyone leave Abaye in the house, because Abaye, I want him to get rid of this demon. He's got the power to be able to do it. But Kitzur, Abaye was left desolate in this empty shul, which was in the middle of the forest. Everybody leaves, and appears this 7-headed monster. Imagine 7th graders hearing this, like, wow, this is great stuff. A 7-headed monster, and Abaye, with every bow that he did, he knocked off one of the heads, and he was able to successfully get rid of the shade. So you just see that when people are left desolate, so this is what happened. This is the reason another halacha. Again, Sheidim come into halacha very often. I have a list of halachot. But here's another halacha where it appears. Besides the fact that before you go into Beit HaKiseh, you have to be careful. Besides the fact that there's an Isser speaking to the Sheidim in Kufayin Ted, there's also a halacha which we have in Me'ain Sheva, which is in Reish Samech Tet. We have a halacha that, of course, we know on Friday night we say a bracha after Shemona Esrei. The reason is because the shuls used to be out in the wilderness, in the midbar, and if everybody would leave and leave someone alone there, so that would be dangerous, just like happened to Abaye. So therefore we say an extra prayer in order to make sure that no one leaves anyone alone, that everyone will be around and everyone leaves together. I don't know if I'd be going to shul if I was in such a situation. It was that scary. But anyways, that's what they did. So we see. Say again.
Is the Gemara Pesachim said that Eretz Yisrael is not
I didn't hear that. The Gemara Pesachim says that there's no mazikin zugot over there. Talks about zugot, maybe. Yeah. And the Gemara zugot talks about mazikin. I don't know, you have to show me. You're talking about Arbi Pesachim, you're talking about, right? I know it discusses mazikin in the sugi of zugot, but I don't remember it saying that. But many of the Gemara I think were in Eretz Yisrael, so I'm surprised. Your Gemara in Brachot could be not. Okay, I'll tell you, let me finish with this, because I see we're really short on time. Let me tell you a couple ways to protect yourself from mazikin. I'll end with the story. Beseder? A couple ways to protect you from mazikin is, first of all, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We all know in the end of Chelik Bet in the Mishabura, which is in Siman Reish Lamed Chet, we know there's such a thing called Kriyat Shema al Hamita. The reason we do it is because of mazikin, meaning we do have a little bit of a chashash for mazikin. We don't have mazikin to take advantage. It's also a Gemara in Brachot and Daf Hey, if I'm not mistaken, something like that, right? There's a Gemara in Brachot, also in Daf Hey, that also says that you have to be careful for mazikin. That's why we say Shema. Everyone look in a Sefer Torah when it says Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. There's two big letters in Shema Yisrael. The Shin is big and Echad. The Dalid is big. Otiyot? Wow, scary. Seems to protect it. Otiyot Shed. Right? Shema Yisrael Shem Elokeinu. So the best protector from one of these things is to be able to say Shema Yisrael, and that's why we do it. Except on Leil Pesach, of course, where it's a Leil Shimurim. Over there, we're very mikatzer in Shema Yisrael. Leil Shimurim doesn't mean no one's going to break in your house necessarily. It could also mean that. I don't think in our day and age it means that so much, especially if you live in certain areas in the world. But usually it means it protects you from the mezikin. And since the reason why you're saying Shema is to protect you from mezikin, from hurting you, the reason why lo aleinu, a person can die at nighttime, is because of the mezikim that get to you, who are malach hamavet, who are yetzahara, who are mekatrek. He's the same person. So therefore a person says Shema in order to protect you. Tkiyat shofar, everyone knows that. Everyone knows that's always keneged. It's the mavriach, the chitzoniyot. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says a person's tokeya, to be mavriach, the shadim from him, and that's why Rosh Hashanah and then eventually Yom Kippur are special times. And also the Or Zarua brings nothing better than Kiddum Masechta, learning Torah. Learning Torah is always the best protector. Shomer mitzvah, lo yeda davura. We always know the Midrash says, Ki'im shamor tishmerum, if you keep your shmartem divrei Torah, ani shomer etchem min amezikin, including Hamas and Hezbollah. I protect you. If you keep your boys in yeshiva and don't midgayes them, don't put them in the army, then the Midrash tells us we're going to be okay. We'll be safe. If you try to empty out the yeshivas, I don't want to think about it. I'm shipping, I'm leaving. I'll take the first flight out of here because we're in big trouble. That's what protects us, and we know the Torah of God. We know David HaMelech, the Malach HaMavet, was dying to get him. I use that expression on purpose. He was dying to get a hold of David HaMelech. And did he get him? Yes. When 1 second he stopped Pasak Mipume, and all of a sudden he was able to get a hold. So you see that we have ways of protecting ourselves. Shadim are real, Shadim are scary, Shadim exist, but you have to be, you can put up your ways of protecting yourself if you're doing it in many types of ways. Many of the sakanot we have, many of the dangers we have involve shadim also, such as we know the Gemara need in Daf Yud Zayin. You shouldn't leave a peeled onion or a peeled garlic. An egg is questionable. You shouldn't leave those over all night. And it's brought in Simon Kuf Tav Zayin Yeridea to tell us you shouldn't leave those. Those cannot come because the shadim zap onto it. I teach it in the girls' school and they're always like, what happens when you peel it? They're trying to figure out what hygienically happens when you're doing it. I'm talking about shadim. Oh, shadim, okay. They don't ask any questions. Right? You understand? That's when it's... That's what it is. Ma'im Chronim, I'll tell you Ma'im Chronim, we do for that. Natil Sheidim in the morning, we're a little bit more lenient than they used to be because, like I said, we're better off a little bit with the Sheidim. We have to do Natil Sheidim as soon as possible though, because they get the heebie-jeebies go on top of your hands. You understand? The Beit HaKisei, Me'ein Sheva, there's places all over the place, not to do speaking to the Sheidim. I'll end with a story. We'll end with a story from the Sefer Kavi Yashar, because I see it's Arvit, and basically it said this. There was a person who bought a house in a certain area, and guess what? There was a poltergeist in the house. It was a haunted house. Literally, I'm saying straight from the Kavi Yashar. There were doors that were opening and closing, windows that were opening and closing. There was noises all over the place. And back then these guys had a back. I know I would not even look at the house. I'd get rid of the deed and goodbye. But they said, this is really a bummer. I bought a house. I want to live here. How do I live here? So they went to the Rav of the town, Rav Yoel Baal Hashem. They went to Rav Yoel Baal Hashem and they said, Sir Rabbi, can you go ahead and take care of this haunted house? I'm so happy I didn't live during that time period as a rabbi. Right? And they said, can you go ahead and take care? So Rav Yoel Baal Hashem went in there and he went down in the basement and he trapped the shade. He got him. He said, get out! You're not allowed to stay in here. He says, you rabbi? No, you get out. He says, he's not allowed. He says, why not? He says, we own this house. We got it, B'Yerusha. We inherited the house. How'd you get a B'Yerusha? He says there was a tzoref, and I'm just bringing out what I spoke in the beginning of this year. There was a black, a tzoref is a guy who does metals, who plays with metals, that had relations and had a relationship with a Sheidah. And he was able to have kids from the Sheidah. That's the chiddush of the story. He actually had other Shadim that were produced from this female Shade. And these children he ended up dying in the war, and we ended up being in the basement, but this is our house. We were Yorish the house. We own this house. The children here are us. We own this house. So the guy said to him two things. First of all, he says, Shadim are not allowed to be in a barren place. There's people here. There are people around you can't be. That's A. And B, the second thing he told him is, that there's no such thing as Yerusha by a shade. There's no such thing as an inheritance by a shade. You're not a person to be able to do that. And they said, no, we want to do that. He said, that's my psak. This is the halacha. You have to get out. And they left. Some people listen to the Rabbanim. He said, we have no choice. When the Rabbanim say, so we have to do. Ad kan.